Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the jungle tier list for patch 8.4. So this patch was probably the biggest one we've had in the past few months, so I'm probably going to make a bunch of different videos in this patch for a lot of different roles and just update you guys on which new champions and new builds are doing better in this patch. So be sure to look out for those. If you're not subscribed yet, then be sure to do so. But with that being said guys, let's get started. So to start it off in the tier 1 for this patch, and we're going to have 6 champions actually in the tier 1 in the jungle for 8.4. The first champion is going to be Rammus. So Rammus right now with Aftershock, it's super good on him. Aftershock got those buffs a few patches ago that really helped out a lot of junglers and top laners because the amount of armor and magic resist you get when you proc that now just makes you super tanky in the early game. And this is especially good on Rammus because it synergizes really well with Rammus' W. Your W scales with MR and armor, so when you proc that Aftershock, it makes your W even stronger and it just makes you super tanky. He also just fits very well into the current meta. A lot of the most picked top laners right now are AD top laners, and they're also like either fighter or bruiser top, so Rammus does a really good job at shutting down those champions in team fights with his taunt. We're also going to be seeing a lot more assassins in the mid lane this patch with the stopwatch nerf, so overall he just does a really good job at shutting down a lot of these champions that are being played quite a bit in this patch. He is also just super tanky, does a lot of damage for a full tank, and he's just one of the most easy and effective junglers that you can play in solo queue. So if you do get autofilled to jungle, or if you're just looking for a simple jungle to pick up, then I'd be playing Rammus in this patch. So next in the tier 1 here is going to be Skarner. So Skarner, with those buffs to his E he got a few patches ago, propelled him from down in tier 3 or tier 4 all the way up to tier 1. The amount of sticking power you have in the early game now with that buff from your E is really good on Skarner. You also do a little bit more damage with that, so it overall just makes him a much stronger pick. Now for your runes on Skarner, for your keystone runes, both Predator and Aftershock are performing very well on him. I think it does depend on the situation as to which one you should be running, and I don't think you should just default to running like Predator every single game on Skarner. If you're in a jungle matchup to where you know you can pressure in the early game and you can look to invade the enemy jungler, then I would take the Aftershock to allow yourself to just have a much better ability to duel in the early game. If you are in a jungle matchup though, to where you're not really going to be looking to invade, if you're going up against a harder matchup, then I would just go Predator, because Predator does make your ganks a lot stronger in the early game, and I think it just does depend on your playstyle and what you're looking to do on Skarner as to which one you'd want to run. The Righteous Glory and Predator combo is really good on Skarner though, because you either use one or the other when you're looking to go for an engage. So if your Glory's on cooldown, you use your Predator, and then when your Predator's on cooldown, you use your Righteous Glory. So you just swap in between those two, and it just allows you to have a much stronger mid game, and you can always be looking for engages whenever your ultimate is off cooldown. Skarner's clear speed is also really fast, so it allows him to get the jump on most junglers in the game, and he can almost always be there for that first gank at level 3, or depending on your path at level 4, so it just allows him to have a slight edge over a lot of the other junglers, and he can really use that to his advantage to get the first early gank off in the early game. So making his way all the way up into tier 1 from down in tier 3 or tier 4 for I'd say the last 2 years now is actually Volibear. So Volibear did get a lot of different buffs in this patch, and they were enough to propel him all the way up into tier 1. So for a quick little TLDR on the changes that Volibear got in this patch, his Q got buffed to where it's now going to give him more movement speed. It got buffed from 15% all the way up to 25%, and then if he is moving towards a champion, it got buffed from 50% up to 60%, and now that is at rank 5, and it does look like maxing your Q out first on Volibear in this patch is what's doing best stat wise now. His W also got a change to where the cooldown is halved if it is used on a minion, so that means that in the jungle your clear is going to be faster now with Voli, and his E got probably the most interesting change here to where it's now going to slightly knock back enemies, so this is actually a pretty good peel tool, it looks like during team fights, if the enemy is trying to engage on your AD carry, then your E can be used really nicely to just stop them from getting on your back line. And then it's also gonna deal damage if the target is airborne or if they're knocked back. So this does synergize really nicely with the Volibear Q, and it does add quite a bit of extra damage there in the early game when you are dueling. Now, in the past, Volibear has always been seen as a champion who just gets kited really easily in team fights, and he's kind of useless once it does reach the team fight stage. But due to the introduction of Predator, and also because Righteous Glory is a very viable rush item option now, Volibear's issues of being kited really aren't as relevant anymore, and I think that's another reason to why he can actually be a pretty strong pick. You rush the Righteous Glory on him, you can either go Predator or Aftershock, depending on what you're looking to do. I think this is similar here to Skarner. If you're looking to gank more in the early game, then I'd take Predator. If you're in an easy matchup and you're looking to invade and duel, then I would go for the Aftershock. And then another interesting thing to note is that Wit's End did get buffed in this patch, and as an early item, as an early offensive item on Volibear, it seems to be doing pretty well. If you are going up against an AP jungler, or if the enemy team does have more AP threats, then Wit's End as one offensive item on Volibear is a pretty good option. It does cost less in this patch, it also does more on hit damage, and it also does steal more magic resist. So if you are snowballing in the early game as Volibear and you do get a lead, then this is actually a pretty good option on him. So the only assassin in the tier 1 for this patch, and probably the best assassin in the jungle for 8.4, is going to be Kha'Zix. So I'm not going to go too much into detail about Kha'Zix here because he has been a staple jungler in the tier 1s for the past few patches now, but basically he just snowballs super hard in the early game. If you get a lead with this jungler, then your ability to just keep pressuring in the enemy's jungle, with your ultimate invis, it just makes it super hard for the enemies to even do anything. If you get ahead with Kha'Zix, his one-shot potential is insanely strong, and just getting your Duskblade early on Kha'Zix just makes you one of the strongest, if not the strongest junglers in the game. So Jax is a jungler who has seen a lot more play in the past few patches. He's even become one of the top tier jungle picks in the competitive scene. Now you do want to play this jungler a little bit differently in solo queue than you would in the competitive scene. So you don't want to be going for that full tank Jax build in solo queue unless your team is really lacking a tank and you just aren't doing too well in the early game. Then you should almost always be going for a Trinity Force, and then after that it does depend on the situation, but at least get one damage item in that Trinity Force with Jax so that you do have a little bit of carry potential there with this champion. A few other things to note here for solo queue Jax is that Electrocute does do better than Press the Attack. It's very easy for Jax to proc Electrocute in the early game, and when you are ganking, it does add for more damage than Press the Attack would, 99% of the time. Unless you are getting multiple auto attacks off on the opponent, then Electrocute is gonna out damage Press the Attack almost every single time, so I would be taking that on Jax for solo queue. And then Jax does have the ability to go for that level 2 gank. What you can do is just take your red buff, you're gonna have your stun and your gap closer at level 2, so you can look to head over to mid lane and you're almost guaranteed to burn the enemy's flash when you are ganking because you got the long range gap closer, you also have the stun, and you can just really free things up in the mid lane for your mid laner by going for that early gank. And then to round out the tier 1s for this patch is going to be Warwick. So Warwick is a jungler who has not received a single buff or a nerf since his rework. I'm almost 99% sure that is the case, and because a lot of these other junglers have just been nerfed over the past few patches and a lot of junglers have gotten changes, it's indirectly made Warwick just stronger and stronger over time, and he's actually sitting at a 56 or 57% win rate in this patch. So stat wise, he is performing the best for any jungler in 8.4. He's just a super solid pick for solo queue because he can get around the map very fast with his W. He can be bot lane, and then the enemy top laner can be low on HP, and he can get to top lane faster than any other jungler to look to punish them for being low on HP, and he can just counter gank super well with that W too. So I think that's a very strong part of Warwick's kit. His skirmishing in the early game is almost unmatched by any other jungler too. He's got the damage reduction from his E, he's also got the CC from that, and then he's got sustain in his kit, so it's very hard to actually beat Warwick in a 2v2 or a 3v3 situation in the early game. So tier 2 picks for this patch, we've got Xin Zhao and Shyvana moving down from tier 1 in, I think I made the last tier list in 8.2, so because Xin Zhao and Shyvana received those nerfs in this patch, they are a little bit weaker, but like I predicted in my new strong and weak video for this patch, they are still fine picks in 8.4. They're not super strong like they were a few patches ago, but they still are definitely very strong picks for solo queue. Now, as for Rengar, a lot of people are saying that the changes are really nice for him and that they do think he is a stronger pick in this patch. Stat-wise, he is performing very weak in this patch. He's only got like a 40% win rate, which is one of the lowest for any junglers, but I wouldn't pay too much attention to those stats just because you are going to have a lot of noob Rengar players playing him in this patch and just a lot of people that have never played him before, so it is too early to tell, in my opinion, exactly how strong the pick is. He could be tier 3, he could even be tier 1, but we're gonna have to wait probably till 8.5 to really know exactly how strong this pick is. So for the tier 3 picks in this patch, a lot of these junglers are still fine picks, and I think it does depend on the elo as to how strong these picks can actually be. If you are in the higher elos and you can play a good Nidalee or you can play a good Elise, then they could be a little bit higher up on the tier list here, but if you are in the lower elos, I would just stay away from most of these picks because junglers in the tier 1 and in the tier 2 are just going to do their jobs a lot easier a lot of the time and just a lot more effectively. And then for the tier 4 junglers in this patch, these junglers just really can't match up with the champions in the tier 1 or the tier 2 right now, so that's the main reason to why they're down here in tier 4. If you're looking for a good tank jungler in this patch, then Volibear, Sejuani, Skarner, Rammus are just way better than Gragas. Lee Sin got that indirect nerf in this patch by the removal of Tracker's Knife, so he's in a pretty bad spot right now. And if you are looking for a good carry jungler, then someone like Kha'Zix, Jax, or Warwick just kind of completely outclassed the Hecarim or the Nocturne in 8.4. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. This was definitely one of the most interesting patches we've had in a while now, so be sure to keep on the lookout for more videos as the patch does move on. I'll probably be making a tier list for almost every single role in this patch, and then I'll also make some other videos on different picks and different builds that are doing better in 8.4. So that being said, guys, if you did enjoy the video, then be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you have yet to already. Thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I'll see you in my next video.